I am going to rank the most popular attractions in Copenhagen so that you can get a better idea of which ones are actually worth your time and which ones you should perhaps avoid. So what I'm going to do is to take the top attractions as TripAdvisor lists them, show you a little bit about the place and what it's all about, and some of the practical stuff like the price and so on, and then finally give it a score of 1 to 10. And in the end, I'll show you my final overall ranking so you can see the top attractions in Copenhagen. According to me, a random local Copenhagener. Let's get into it. So we start off at the Royal Library, or the Black Diamond as it's also called. And as you have guessed, it's a library. But should you really visit a library as a tourist? Well, of course, if you want to read or buy some books, it's the perfect spot. But I think most people will come here for the architecture. So really the library has like 2 parts to it. There's the old building with the classic design, which then connects to the new part, and it's this new part that is referred to as the Black Diamond. So it's a really unique mix of old and new architecture, and it is just really beautiful. In the new part, you got this gorgeous view over the building and the water, and on the sides here there are study halls and reading halls. Heading into the old section of the library, we start to see the beautiful classic design here. As a visitor or tourist, you have free access to these areas, but you cannot enter the reading halls and some other areas as, well, people are studying. So please remember to be respectful. There's also a cafe in the building, and it is a really cozy area to just grab a coffee and perhaps take it outside by the water. The location here is really cool, and it's easy to combine this. It's easy to combine a visit to the library with other awesome places. So I actually really like the Black Diamond. A lot of the modern architecture in Copenhagen is not really my cup of tea, but the Black Diamond is really cool, and I like how it mixes the old with the new. So the Black Diamond gets an 8 out of 10. It's very unique, charming, mixes the old and the new, but I mean, it is a library, so perhaps there's not too much to do when you're out on a visit. Usually, most foreigners know about 2 things before coming to Copenhagen. It's Nyhavn and the Little Mermaid. It's iconic, and tourists flock here to grab a picture of this little statue. And I mean, as the name suggests, it is little. A lot of people actually perhaps get a bit surprised of how small this statue actually is. But I mean, it is probably interesting to go and see it because you know it from beforehand, and it is one of those, I guess, iconic places in Copenhagen. But in all honesty, it isn't that interesting going to see the Little Mermaid, and it can also get super crowded out here. I do, however, recommend that most people go see it anyways, because it's really easy to combine a visit to the Little Mermaid with other places, some of which we will actually have a look at later in this video. The Little Mermaid gets a 5 out of 10. It's neat, and I mean, it is iconic for Copenhagen, but it is kind of boring. Frederiksberg Have, or the Frederiksberg Gardens, is a large park that the locals here love. I mean, I might be a little bit biased here because I've lived close to the park for many years. But not too many tourists actually come out here because it is a little bit away from the city center. And I mean, it's in the city center that just most the attractions in Copenhagen are. So you will need to get here via the metro, by a bicycle, or take a long walk. But in my opinion, it's worth it. I always love a good park in the middle of a city, and Frederiksberg Have is huge. There's these canals that runs throughout the park, and there's loads of cute little buildings everywhere. You can also get a free view into the Copenhagen Zoo, which is located right next door, and have a pretty cool view of the elephants. And I mean, if you go here, it's a pretty great excuse to go see more of the area of Frederiksberg, which is an awesome area of Copenhagen that not too many tourists actually visit. 9 out of 10 for Frederiksberg Have, probably the best park in all of Copenhagen. So Strøget is a large and famous pedestrian street in the middle of the city center. It's also quite a bit of a tourist street, and I mean, there are a lot of people here. Now, it is pretty nice with such a large pedestrian street, especially if you live somewhere where this is kind of unusual. But at the same time, it is also just home to all the big brand stores, H&M, Zara, Gucci, whatever. The shops that you'll see everywhere in the world, they are here on Strøget. So it can feel a little bit bland, perhaps. in my opinion. But at the same time, it's also very hard to avoid Strøget, as it really connects a lot of the tourist attractions around the city center. And for example, the Round Tower, which we will have a look at later, is located right on Strøget. So really, this is how I would use Strøget. Just for walking, like transporting yourself, going from one attraction perhaps to the next, or going to eat, and you can just walk around, enjoy all the beautiful buildings that you will see. Strøget is kind of famous for shopping, but I mean, as I mentioned, it's just all the big brand stores, and it is a little bit boring. I think if you want a better shopping experience, depending on what you're looking for, of course, head down all the side streets from Strøget. Just look at the difference in how many people actually do this. And then visit the shops located around here. A lot of these are local shops as well. You'll also find a lot of souvenir shops on Strøget. And you know, there are some cool things, but a lot of it is just basic magnets, hygge t-shirts and whatever. If you want a unique souvenir from Copenhagen, have a look at some of these Royal Copenhagen coffee cups. It's a very classic Danish design. Now, I do think that they actually also have a shop on Strøget. So if you are there, you can check out Royal Copenhagen. 4 out of 10 for Strøget. It's nice enough and very hard to avoid, but at the same time, it kind of feels like every other European city here. Remember how I said that when you visit the Little Mermaid, you should combine it with visiting other places as well. This is one of them. So Castello, or the Citadel, was an important part of the defenses of the city of Copenhagen. And like from an aerial view here, you can clearly see the, I guess, Pentagon construction. And actually Castello is one of the best preserved fortresses in Europe. So if you're into this kind of history, it's a really cool place to visit. Today, Castello still belongs to the Danish army and is a workplace for them. So you will see armed guards at the entrance here, but it is also an attraction for locals and tourists alike. People come here to go for a walk along the ramparts and to explore what a fortress like this actually looks like. Castello gets 6.5. It's pretty unique and well preserved, making it a great visit, especially in combination with the Little Mermaid and other nearby attractions. But again, there's not too much to do besides just walking around and enjoying the view. Christiania, or Freetown Christiania, is one of the most visited attractions in Copenhagen. And to be honest, I think it's also one of the most misunderstood. When you look online, you'll see that it's a lawless area where the Danish laws don't apply. And I mean, this is simply not true. Now, I can't cover everything about Christiania in about a minute here, so I'll stick to talking about how it is now and why you might want to visit or not. Now, Christiania is also known to be a place where they sell illegal substances. But recently the police and the locals actually got like completely rid of these people for good. So I mean, it is a completely safe area to visit. There are a lot of great cafes, neat little shops, and a lot of cool art and interesting buildings due to, I mean, the history of the place and the people who live here. But I mean, that's about it. Don't expect to come here and see something crazy. And to be honest, it just feels more like a tourist attraction. Now, if you are in the area and want to go grab a coffee or something, it is a pretty cool place to check out. But besides that, it is, in my opinion, probably one of the most overrated places in all of Copenhagen. Christiania gets a 3 out of 10. It has a very interesting history and there are still some very cool things to see and do today. But if you have read anything about it online beforehand, you'll probably be disappointed. So Amalienborg is the palace where the Danish royal family lives. It's a really beautiful place to visit, and if you can, catch the changing of the guard every day at 12 AM. Visiting Amalienborg is almost a must when visiting Copenhagen, and it is conveniently located as well. But now this list on TripAdvisor specifically refers to the museum inside Amalienborg. And if you are really interested in learning about the royal family and the history of the royal family and the specific people in the Danish royal family, then it's really a great visit for you. A big part of the museum is just about the kings and queens of Denmark, and you can learn a lot about our new king. But if you aren't super into the royal family, there definitely are other museums where you could probably spend your time and money a little bit better. 4 out of 10 for the museum, as it is just very specific and really not aimed at everyone. But 9 out of 10 for Amalienborg itself. Right next to Amalienborg, you'll find the beautiful Marmorkirken, the Marble Church, or Frederiks Church as it's also called. And I mean, this church gives me a little bit of Rome vibes, and in my opinion, it's probably the prettiest church in all of Copenhagen. You can also enter the church, where it's also really beautiful. And I mean, combining a visit to Marmorkirken with a visit to Amalienborg and other nearby attractions is super easy. In general, many attractions in Copenhagen are really within walking distance, which is something I really enjoy. 7 out of 10 for Marmorkirken. It's really beautiful, but I mean, once you've had a little look and perhaps snapped the picture, then you'll probably be moving on. Now this is a completely free museum, and I like that. So the short story is that there was a pretty rich guy in Denmark called David, who collected art, and well, he decided that when he died, his house and his art collection should be turned into a museum. Great for us. Now the collection has a lot of European art, but the main chunk of the museum is of Islamic art, which also makes it really unique in Denmark, as there aren't really a lot of museums which specializes in this area. Now I went here recently for my first time ever actually, and I was really pleasantly surprised. It was a great little museum. I probably spent an hour here and I saw most of the museum. And I like that. I don't always enjoy those huge museums where you can basically spend several days. And this place is perfect for when you inevitably will get caught out in the rain. 8 out of 10 for the David collection. A nice, unique and free museum. The very iconic Opera House in Copenhagen, and arguably also one of the prettiest modern buildings in the city. And also the location is just fantastic. It sits right on the water, just opposite of Amalienborg, where we were a little bit earlier. I think most visitors will enjoy this building from afar and just, have a look at it and take some nice pictures. But most people probably won't go up close to it, because that would be a bit of a walk around, and there's not much else to do over in that area where the Opera House is located. Now, if you are into opera and want to explore inside the building itself, see some behind the scenes and all of that, there are some guided tours that you can do. You could, of course, also try to catch a show there. Now, personally, I haven't done this, as I am probably like most people, and I just stand back and enjoy the building from afar. For the best view of the Opera House, you could go on a boat tour, which will basically take you right past it, or you could go to Amalienborg and head down to the water, where then the Opera House just sits exactly on the opposite side of the water. Or head over to Ophelia Place, where you'll also have a great view. 7 out of 10 for the Opera House. It's really beautiful and unique, but unless you're really into opera, you'll most likely just be having a look from afar and be on your way. So this is a beautiful botanical garden in the middle of the city, and it's free. It's really almost like a big park. I mean, there's a lake, places to hang out and relax when the weather is nice. And of course, you have all the cool plants spread across the gardens. And it's really quite nice, because there are a bunch of small little paths everywhere. So even when it is busy in the garden, it never really feels that crowded. And it is a pretty good time just walking around and spotting funky looking plants. Now, there is a part of the botanical garden where you do have to pay to enter. It's this house part that you see here. It's called the Palm House and the Butterfly House. The price to enter is 70 kroner. And I mean, you could easily enjoy your time in the botanical garden without entering, but inside you will find all the tropical plants, and the layout of the house is pretty cool as well. You can also walk up these stairs and be amongst the top of all the tall palms and trees. After the Palm House, you'll reach the Butterfly House. Now, I know nothing about butterflies, but it was nice enough to see. 9 out of 10 for the botanical garden. It's really nice, and I mean, I really like plants, and I also really like that you can enjoy a big part of the garden completely for free, and then if you want to see a little bit more, then you can pay to enter the house. Copenhagen is flat, so if you want a view overlooking the city, you'll need to go up in a building that's a little bit high. And we don't really build that tall in Copenhagen. So one of the options you have, and probably the most famous, is the Round Tower, which was actually built in 1642. And the Round Tower is a pretty round building located right on the street Strøget, which we talked about earlier. The price to get up there is 40 kroner, and in the busy summer months you can expect to wait in line probably for about 20 minutes. But walking up is also an experience in itself. It's a really unique building, and you just go up round and round like this on a ramp instead of stairs. And of course, there's a whole history behind all of this, which you can learn more about there. It is really beautiful though, and along the way there are a few exhibitions that you can enjoy as well. Getting to the top, you'll be about 35 meters above street level and have a pretty good view of the whole city. There are some signs around the fence that will help you spot iconic landmarks around the city. 7.5 for the round tower. It's really nice to get a good viewpoint of the city, and the building is really cool. And I mean, the price is fair enough, but there are better places to get a great view of the city though. One of which we'll discover a little bit later in the video. So ToHel is a food market, very conveniently located in the middle of the city. It's actually quite large with 2 big buildings and a large outdoor area as well. The focus here is more on specialty food options and ingredients, meaning that you can go here to do shopping for your home cooking, or you could buy something to eat right on the spot. It's also a place where people come to just hang out, eat some food and grab a drink. As it is more focused on specialty and high quality foods, expect to pay a pretty high price here. Well, you should probably expect that in most of Copenhagen. 8 out of 10 for ToHel. I really like food markets, and ToHel is pretty great, but it's just so expensive here in Copenhagen. But it is definitely worth at least one visit. Do you want to learn about the history and culture of Denmark going way back? Then this place is for you. There really is a lot to see and do here, and you could easily spend hours in here. And children will love it too. You will discover loads of Viking era artifacts and the history, and see some of the famous finds here, like the Sun Chariot and the Golden Horns. And then you'll basically move through time and explore what Denmark was like all the way up until today. If you're interested in culture and history and learning more about the country you are visiting, the National Museum is probably right for you. Oh, and a pro tip again, if you're shopping for souvenirs, head to the shop at this museum or other museums around Copenhagen, as here you will often find some very high quality and unique items to bring home. At least if you're looking for something a little bit different than a fridge magnet. 8.5 for the National Museum. It's great, but it does perhaps drag on a little bit too long, in my opinion. Christiansborg is the home of the parliament in Denmark, and it is just a very historic place as well. The buildings here are fantastic, and I mean, you can freely walk around on the outside and enjoy the beautiful architecture. And also right behind Christiansborg, you'll find this cute little garden, which is a bit of a gem. Now there are some parts of Christiansborg that you can also enter and well, go see what it looks like on the inside. But this is also where my problem is with this place. If you want to buy a ticket to Christiansborg, you will have 6 different options. You can pay to visit and see each of the, well, 5 areas individually, if you only want to see the royal kitchen, for example. If you do this, the price ranges from 80 to 125 kroner. Or you can buy the full ticket so that you can explore the 5 areas, and here you'll pay 195 kroner. And that's just really expensive in my opinion, especially because it's not that interesting in the end. 6 out of 10 for Christiansborg. So this is a church, and translated the name means Our Savior's Church. And it's located in the awesome area of Christianshavn. But what's very special about this church is that it has a pretty tall spire or tower that you can actually go up in and walk outside all the way to the top. If you do this, you'll get close to 90 meters above street level, and you'll have a fantastic view over the city. Compared to the round tower from earlier, you are quite a bit higher here. And the fence in front of you is smaller and closer to you, so you really get an amazing unobstructed view here. You start by climbing through the church and walk past the church bell. It almost feels like you shouldn't really be here. The stairs are tiny and a little bit hard to walk up in some areas. But then you get outside on a bit of a platform where there is just a bit of space to get a nice relaxed view of the city. And from here you can continue walking up the spire on the outside. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of heights, so it is a little bit scary as the fence is really not that tall and there is quite a long way down. There is also just the one way up and down, and it just gets narrower and narrower towards the top, so you will have to squeeze past people walking the other way. But it's all worth it. Probably the best aerial view that you can get in Copenhagen. You need to book a ticket in advance with a specific time frame, and the price is 70 kroner. This is a 10 out of 10 for me, one of the best things to do in Copenhagen. Another museum for the list, this time it's Glyptoteket. And this has to be one of the most aesthetic and beautiful museums in Copenhagen. The main thing in Glyptoteket is sculptures. There are a lot, and from different areas of the world and from different time periods. And they're just fantastically presented in these gorgeous rooms. When I went there the last time, the staff were a little bit rude though. Like one of the guys pretty much just yelled at me because I had a backpack on, which apparently you aren't allowed to bring inside. And the only way of really knowing this is if you have read the whole website beforehand. And I mean, when I then responded to the guy and asked him some question, he just completely ignored me. So. Oh, and another tip about Glyptoteket and well, most other museums in Copenhagen is that most of them have a day of the month where it's completely free to enter. Often this is like the last Wednesday of the month. But check with the museum you want to visit and see if this date coincides with your visit. 9 out of 10 for Glyptoteket. I really like the aesthetics here. And it is one of my favorite museums in Copenhagen. But the staff could have been a little bit nicer to me. And also there's just not a lot of Danish art in this museum, if you're looking for that. Rosenborg is a beautiful castle right in the middle of the city. This castle is about 400 years old and the royals used it as a summer residence for a while. But it was later turned into a museum and a place to house important objects like the crown jewels, which you can now see in the museum inside the castle. It's been a while since I was inside the museum, I'll admit, but it is really beautiful. And it's also just interesting to see how a fancy castle like this used to look like. I think though that I would choose to enjoy the castle for free from the outside and spend more time visiting other places. It is just hard to do it all. Of course, if you really are into royal history and want to see a castle from the inside, this is one of the best ones to see. And I would choose the Rosenborg Museum over the Amalienborg Museum from earlier, as there are just a lot more unique things here in Rosenborg. So it gets a 7.5. Tivoli is the second oldest still running amusement park in the world. And the oldest one is actually also located in Denmark and is called Parken. It's really cool too. Tivoli is one of the very iconic spots here in Copenhagen. And I mean, if you like the rides, it's great. If you don't, it's also great, as it's just really beautiful here and the vibe is fantastic. There are also loads of great restaurants and you can easily spend half a day or even a full day here. But I would at least try to be here when it gets dark, as the park gets even more beautiful when all the lights come on. My only real issue with Tivoli is the price. Holy damn, can you spend a fortune when you're visiting Tivoli. So it's 160 kroner just to enter the park. And if you want to try some rides, you can buy individual tickets for the rides, which are very expensive though. Or you can get a ride pass, which costs 299 kroner. Or you can get the combination ticket for just 419 kroner. And it's really not much cheaper for children. So if you go here as a family or as a group, you can easily spend thousands of Danish kroner, or I mean hundreds of dollars. As food options in Tivoli are great, but also really expensive. 9 out of 10. I really love Tivoli and I've been going there pretty much every single year since I was a kid. But prepare to open your wallet. And number 1, which makes it the most popular tourist attraction in Copenhagen, according to TripAdvisor, is of course Nyhavn. It's the most iconic spot in all of Denmark, basically. And it's what you will see on pretty much all postcards from here. And to be fair, it is really beautiful. I mean, I think you need to come here if you're going to Copenhagen. So you'll get the best view of the iconic row of houses from the opposite side of the canal. And it's here you'll probably take the best pictures as well. And just walking around here is great. It's really a lovely area. Now, for the perfect Danish experience, buy a beer in a supermarket and have a seat by the canals and relax. You can of course also sit at one of the many cafes along Nyhavn, have a drink and get something to eat. Will you be overpaying a little bit here? Sure, but you are paying for the location and the experience. I guess the only issue here would be that it can get really crowded sometimes, but hey, it's the most popular tourist attraction in all of Denmark, so fair enough. 10 out of 10 for Nyhavn. It's iconic and it actually lives up to the hype. So here is my final verdict of the top 20 attractions in Copenhagen, according to TripAdvisor. Now, what can you use this for? Well, that's up to you. But hopefully you have a bit of a better idea of what each of these attractions are about and perhaps where you should prioritize your money and your time. Now, if you are visiting Copenhagen soon or planning to, then you should watch this video right here, where I in 15 minutes bring you 20 very important tips for your Copenhagen visit.